Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
It's not keto, it's a... Right, welcome to a Coffee with Karen. So a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about confidence. And I don't know about you, I think this last year, for some people, they might have struggled with this a little bit. So what are the solutions to getting that confidence back? So I just want to introduce my guest today. It's Tania Lopez. It is Tania Lopez. I just had a brain.
It's Tania Lopez, yep.
Oh, let's start right again. I just suddenly thought, have I got that wrong? Right.
You
It's
haven't.
been a long day. Let's start again. Welcome to a Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about confidence, which is something over this past year with what's been going on for some people. They may feel that they've been struggling with this. So the whole point of this is to offer up solutions to help people with this. So I'd like to introduce my guest, Tania Lopez. If you can explain to the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your story.
Okay, so thank you so much for having me on this, Karen. It's brilliant. So I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. And I've been doing this for a few years now, and my area of expertise is compassionate parenting. So I'll go a little bit more into that in a bit. And my background is that I've worked with families for about 20 years. And I guess my own backstory is that I've spent my whole adulthood trying to get over my childhood. And I feel like that's kind of led me to the work I've been doing, working with parents, working with families. And so when I first started doing the hypnotherapy, I was working, sorry about that. I was working with clients who were having issues around anxiety, stress. So that was really the work I was doing. But then because I've got so much experience of working with families and parents, I've decided to niche into compassionate parenting.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I mean, it's interesting that you say you've come into this due to your own childhood, which is something we've been hearing quite a lot in past shows.
Okay.
So what would you say about that? Well, what exactly about that has prompted you into going into the career that you've chosen?
And, you know, I didn't do it deliberately. I think these things happen, they come and find you. And it's like there's a sense that you need to do this work. And because I've been doing so much work on myself, you know, I feel like I've done years of work on myself. And then that's just kind of led me to all these different roles that I've been in. And finally kind of doing this work where I'm kind of talking about compassionate parenting and looking at parenting as a whole.
Right.
So, and I didn't make a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
It just came. It's just come to me, and I have wondered over the years, how have I ended up doing this? And then I've just thought, you know, everything that I've been processing, my own stuff, has just kind of led me naturally to this point.
It seems to be quite a common thread because you've been working on yourself, healing yourself, then you want to go on and help others because there's no rule book with parenting, is there?
No, people always say that, and I say, okay, there isn't a rule book, but you were given a download. So for your own parents, you've had this download. The only thing is that download might have some viruses, might need a reboot, updating, you know, all of those things. Yeah. So there is a download, but it probably needs a few tweaks. It needs updating, like you said. Bring it into 2021.
So some parents might not have the confidence. Struggling with being confident as a parent. So how do you work? Where does it even start?
Where does it even start? So yeah, I think parenting is an area of judgment. I think you know, if your child is behaving in a certain way, there's almost immediate finger pointing, someone should be doing something. And I think the reason I've gone into compassionate parenting, so when you hear that, you immediately think it's about being compassionate towards children. So how do we talk to children compassionately? How do we get the best out of them? And part of compassionate parenting is to do with that. But actually, a really important thing that I do through the hypnotherapy is the way parents talk to themselves. How compassionate are you towards yourself? How compassionate are we towards other parents? Do we allow them the grace to make mistakes? Because it's an area that is going to be full of mistakes, because we've had all these downloads that are not working. And even if you've not had the best parenting, you might become an adult and become a parent and think, I will do things very differently to my own parents.
Yeah.
Well, that's easy. But when things are going, sideways, you don't have a blueprint.
Yes.
Know how to do things differently. So unfortunately, we resort to what we know, even if we know it didn't work. But because
and some of that would be unconscious, wouldn't it? So it's
Absolutely.
it's not a conscious thing. We all want to be good parents. Nobody sets out to be a bad parent, whatever a bad parent is. So a lot of this is, which is quite interesting. I mean, obviously being a hypnotherapist, you're working on the subconscious, but people, if they're not aware of what they're doing, there's no way to fix it, because you are doing it on autopilot. Would that be right?
Exactly. So when things are difficult, we do go into automatic pilot, and that's where we might be repeating patterns, repeating things that we wish we, and sometimes after the event, you might think, oh, I can't believe I've done that. I wish I hadn't done it. But there's no way of kind of knowing how to do it differently next time. And the words that you've just used, good parent, bad parent, they're so common in our language. And actually, there's no duality. There's none of this good or bad. It's just how we are. So again, and I think parenting is an area where everyone has something to say about it. And I think it's because we've all had the experience of being parented. Even if you grew up without parents, you've still been parented by someone. So that's why everyone has something to say about it.
Absolutely. They're all going to have opinions. And also, it's quite interesting what you just said earlier about the relationship with ourselves, so how we talk to ourselves. Now, what I've found with sort of even my work is that we can actually be pretty unkind to ourselves and talk really rather badly to ourselves in a way that actually maybe we wouldn't speak to other parents or to other people in that way. Yeah. Have you found that is quite a big obstacle for some people?
I think it's a massive thing for many, many people. Like the judgments we make about ourselves, they were judgments we heard when we were children. And so what a lot of parents carry are these feelings of failure, feelings of guilt, and feelings of shame. And they're really, really big emotions. And so the compassionate parenting is about, how do we deal with those feelings? This feeling that you're always getting it wrong, no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to do your best, it never seems to be good enough. That other parent is doing so much better than you. This person on Facebook, they seem to have such a perfect family. Look how well they're all getting on. There's just like all of these this story, this narrative that's going on through everyone's heads, that they're doing so much worse than everyone else.
And there you go. You've just said it there. It's all about the stories we tell ourselves. Fascinating. Yeah. So for those who've not really, because I suppose, hypnotherapy, it's not really woo-woo. For some people, it might sound a little bit woo-woo, but I would say it's more on the mind side of things. Mental perspective.
Yeah.
But for those who do see hypnotherapy as something, they see on the telly for entertainment or a show, can you give a little bit of background about what hypnotherapy is, and how it works, and how it isn't woo-woo. It is quite real.
Yeah. I've actually, the way I got into hypnotherapy was I had hypnotherapy myself,
Okay.
and I could see how powerful it was. And my background is that I used to work as a counsellor as well, and I'm an educator as well. So yeah, when I had hypnotherapy myself, I wasn't sure about it because I'd heard all the things that everybody else has heard, that, you know, you go on stage and somebody makes you run around like a chicken, or makes you do things that you really don't want to do. And it's, I suppose hypnotherapy or hypnotists have used that as entertainment. And so it's given hypnotherapy a bit of a bad reputation.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I've had clients who have said to me, oh, what will you make me do? And will you make me say things that I don't want to say? And actually hypnotherapy is really people being in control. Being in hypnotherapy, actually experiencing it, we do that many, many times a day. So just before you fall asleep and just before you wake up, they're both hypnotic. You know, you're actually in hypnosis in both those times. If you're watching a television program, if you're driving long distances, you're actually in hypnosis. So, and a lot of people say, I can't be hypnotized. And actually, if you're falling asleep and waking up, you're already in hypnosis. So, you know, it's a very natural occurring thing. It's not a unnatural thing that we go into. It's something that we're all very good at doing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in those moments that you can really give messages to your subconscious mind, because the subconscious controls so much, controls 90% of what you do.
Absolutely. Why are we not aware more of this? Why isn't this sort of taught more in schools? Because it does seem to be something that is not really discussed. We all think we're in control. We all think, you know, I suppose it's our ego that we're in control of things. But like, as you said, the majority of our day is done pretty much on autopilot. It is our subconscious that's running things. But it's amazing that, to me, that it is something that's not really spoken about.
Yeah, it's never really been part of mainstream. I mean, even the way, you know, if I was going to fold my arms, I've you know, I'm doing it. I'm not in control. I'm not kind of thinking, I'm going to do this, and then it's just so automatic. So much of our actions, you know, like when you were talking before and you were moving your arms, you weren't kind of thinking, I'm going to move my right arm like this. You know,
that's right.
So much of this is on automatic pilot and out of our conscious control. But there's the power. When you're in hypnosis, you can make some amazing changes, and they're very natural. And it's just kind of, it's like reprogramming yourself. So like we were talking about rebooting ourselves, so just boot the old programs that are no longer serving you. Absolutely. And replace them with programs that will serve you. And so really the person going through the hypnotherapy is in charge. What changes do they want to make? And actually, if somebody was to suggest something to you that was completely outside of your normal behavior, you know, things that you would find acceptable. So if I was to say, I want you to go and rob a bank, but that is completely outside of what you would do, you would automatically reject that suggestion. It's only suggestions that are acceptable that will kind of filter through.
Right.
So, you know, you do have control in that respect.
So it is a way of, so basically what you're saying is it's a way of replacing maybe some bad habits with maybe some better habits. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's replacing, I think, what doesn't serve you anymore. Something that doesn't work for you anymore. It had its purpose when you were younger, for whatever reason. You know, we all have loads of adaptations that we've made so we could get through our childhood. But those adaptations no longer serve us.
Right.
Kind of replacing those adaptations with whatever will help you to further yourself in however way you want, really.
Okay. Cool. So with the way that you're working with, so your particular niche, so you're working with parents obviously, that want to, I mean, how does it start? Is it to have better relationships with their children? Is it to, what are they looking to change in general?
Yeah, so generally parents come because they want to change a behavior in a child. And then, you know, once they're working with you, they realize that the behavior in the child is just information. So if you just try and change a behavior, you're not really getting to the root of whatever's going on for that child. And also the dynamic between a parent and a child, because there might be a behavior that a child does that would not trigger one parent and it would completely trigger another parent. So it's working out, is this my trigger? Is this my thing? Or is it that my child actually needs something? So it's really asking some of those questions, you know, what is it that my child needs in this moment when they're behaving like this? What do I need in this moment? And what is it that we jointly need? And so where it's a child's behavior, and maybe we need to think about their needs, what's going on behind the behavior, I'll provide coaching for that. And where it's the parent's own stuff that's getting in the way of having the best relationship and getting the best out of their child, that's where I use the hypnotherapy. So it's kind of really about neutralizing some of those triggers. Because again, those triggers will be from our childhood. And it's got this child in front of us and they're a mirror for us. And where, you know, it's bringing up all these really big emotions. And it's what do we do with them? So the hypnotherapy is really useful for shifting some of that baggage that we no longer need. So then you can have a really clean slate in terms of creating a relationship with your child, rather than bringing all the backstory into this relationship with your, you know, with your child.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it is working on their confidence as a parent.
Yeah.
Well, so rather than triggering with a reaction from the child, they've got then the confidence to deal with it in a certain way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it's not always about, you know, that there's something wrong with my child needs fixing. And if there is anything going on with the child, then we can deal with that through coaching. But is some of that stuff mine? Is some of that stuff that, you know, could I be doing things differently?
And
that's
so because we can put our own stuff, as it were, onto the child. And if we want, and then it's also our demands, I suppose, as well. It's what we want done.
Yeah.
And if things aren't being done, then we could get triggered. Whereas,
and not being done in the way that you like it to be done, and in your timeline. Yeah.
Fascinating. And of course, because with different, different children's different responses, there's so much to it.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's being aware and it's being open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it to the case that it isn't, you know, there's no one at fault. It's just finding out what's going on a sub level, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that is really important, that this isn't about blaming, shaming. It's not about that. It's really about what is the best way forward. Can I be doing something different? And really, when we're talking about confidence, if we can deal with the feelings of failure, because I think that's really big with a lot of parents, especially with a lot of mums, you know, feeling like they're failing at being a mum. So if you can deal with that feeling of failure, feeling of guilt, and, you know, mum guilt is such a big thing as well, and feelings of shame, that helps with confidence. Because you're shifting all of these emotions that don't serve you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't serve the child either, and doesn't serve the relationship.
Right. Yeah. Why is it that I suppose it is because, like you said, sort of fairly early on about, you know, you could judge, or you're looking at other parents and making a judgment. Like you said, we're creating these stories that, you know, their family life is absolutely perfect, and also they're so much better at it than me. And why is it? Where do you think that comes from? Is that something you feel that's always happened, or is that something that's got bigger in more recent times due to social media?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose social media kind of, you know, everything's in your face, isn't it? You can't get away from it. Whereas before, we didn't know what happened in other people's houses unless we went to visit them. And then maybe they'd be a bit tidy up and clear up if they knew they were having guests.
Yes, sure.
I think comparison has always been there. But it just seems to be on a much bigger scale, because now you're not just comparing yourself to your next door neighbour, you're comparing yourself to someone in another country.
Yes.
And it's on a much bigger, grander scale, if you like. So I think that has definitely gotten worse, because it's just on such a big scale, and it's everywhere you look, and it's not just one platform.
Yeah.
There are so many more platforms that are constantly, that we could constantly go on to and feel bad about ourselves. And I think the feeling of, not being enough, not being good enough is huge.
So all of this is down to, we need to build people up a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
And allow people to give themselves a pat on the back, celebrate each win, rather than looking at anything that's gone wrong and focusing on that. I mean, that does seem to be a common thread with everything, really. Even, a lot of the topics that we've discussed previously, really, on this show, that there seems to be this common thread. It's all linked to, well, it's amazing how many stories we tell ourselves that are just simply not true, and that are giving us such a bad feeling place. And it's when you can step back and look in, you think, why on earth are we doing this? But we all do it to ourselves at some point or other.
Yeah.
But when you can see it, you think, wow, that's crazy, really.
I think we are negatively wired. And so, like, if somebody gives us a compliment, we're so quick at dismissing it.
Is that a British thing, or is that
I think it's it could be a British thing, and it could be it's wider as well. This thing about just kind of not really letting the compliment sink in, and almost dismissing it and not allowing it inside. Whereas if somebody was to give us a criticism, we think about it, we ruminate over it, it becomes part of us. 20 years later, we could still remember that criticism.
Yes.
Some people.
Some
5 minutes later, we're not remembering that compliment.
Yes.
So there's an imbalance in the way we filter things. Absolutely. So we're very good at filtering the negative and making it ours, and we're very good at filtering out the positives, the compliments, and keeping them out. So we never get to feel really good about ourselves.
And why do you think that is? Where do you think that comes from?
I mean, I suppose, our brains are, there is a biological factor there that we are negatively wired. And maybe some of it is, to do with like not blowing our own trumpet, not being big-headed, and thinking it's actually a good thing to be self-deprecating.
So that's more of a cultural thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we've been brought up to believe, that yes, we shouldn't act in a certain way. And so it's a learnt thing, right?
And also, I guess it goes to how you were brought up as a child. I mean, so many adults were never given enough kind of positivity when they were growing up. So, and it might not just be parents, it could be teachers, extended family, friends, who picked up on the things we didn't do so well straight away. And the things we did well were dismissed, not recognized. So we've just grown up to believe all the negative stuff we've heard.
Right, it's been pointed out to us too much, rather than. So how do we turn that around?
So I suppose it's kind of really taking time to monitor our own internal dialogue. So that's the first step, is monitor. How are you talking to yourself? And then it's about, and I don't think it's just about kind of saying, okay, I'm just going to swap that for the positive. And it's kind of giving yourself the grace to make mistakes. I think we see failure as an endpoint. So say if we do something, say if somebody takes a driving test and they fail the first time, some people might take that as an endpoint. I failed my test, rather than actually going, actually, the bit I failed at is the bit I need to work on. There's lots of things that I've done well, And so I always think failure is our launch pad for learning, whereas some people see failure as a conclusion and think it's actually a statement about me. I'm a failure. So it's
Right.
all the I am statements rather than, okay, I failed my driving test this time. There's something for me to learn and I will go for my test again.
Right. Interesting.
It's about, so the thing I say, it's about not coming to conclusions, but being curious.
Right.
So before conclusions. So rather than saying, I am this, it's actually asking questions. Am I really this? When have I not been this? So say if I'm saying I'm a failure, it's like asking the question, when have I not failed? When have I turned a failure into a success?
There you
So
go.
it's kind of asking questions that are if you like, smarter questions. They're questions that kind of that lead to more information.
Yeah. Well, I suppose in a way, because it's interesting what you said about, I suppose it's we, once we label ourselves, it's like it's a common trait to then, if we have failed at something, then we've identified with that and we're saying I am a failure.
Yeah.
Whereas, so the point you're making about asking yourself questions, I think that's huge, because for one, that is just by asking a question brings you into the present moment, because you've got to consciously think and come up with answers. So then, like that, we can have this in our subconscious on sort of negative self-talk, and that will stop it in its tracks, because you've actually, rather than made a statement that maybe that your subconscious doesn't agree with, it's had to and actually look for answers.
Absolutely.
So then you've got your subconscious helping you rather than hindering you. Would that be?
Absolutely, Karen. Yeah, when you ask questions, your brain searches for the answers. When you come to a conclusion, there's nothing left to be done. It's like, this is the conclusion I've come to, the end. Whereas when you ask questions, you're kind of going into inquiry mode, and you're being open, and you're being open to what are the possibilities? What else can I do? What else have I done?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Knowing how sort of, this is how, our subconscious mind, I suppose, in a way, always wants to be right. Our ego wants to be right. So the more we take on these labels, that's not really helping us, because then our subconscious is with that. It's like, well, yeah, you are a failure.
Yeah. And let's keep repeating what you do.
There you go. Because then it's like self-confirmation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the answer is, so from what you're telling me, is that we need to, ask ourselves questions.
Yeah. The answer is ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your brain will come up with some amazing answers. And even if you don't get the answer straight away, give yourself the space for the answers to trickle down, or for the questions that you've asked, for the answers to trickle down to you, and they will. And that's a really supportive way. So rather than going, I can't believe I'm like this as a parent. As a parent, I've done this again. I've not got this right. And it's asking yourself different questions, rather than why do I always do this? Why can't I get it right? They're the kind of questions that don't serve us. Why can't I be more like her? Again, there's a conclusion and a judgment in there. So the kind of questions you want to ask are ones without a judgment, that are really open questions, rather than the kind of questions we ask, is, why have I done this again? Why am I in the same place I was last year?
Right. We've got to be a little bit, give ourselves a break, right?
Exactly.
Right, chill out. Why are we so hard on ourselves? And with your experience of this, have you found there be a difference between mums and dads?
So my experience has been mainly with mums. And I suppose with dads, I'm sure there are dads who go through this as well.
Mm-hmm.
But my experience has been mainly with mums. Yeah.
Okay. And do you think that's, I mean, I suppose, yeah, I mean, you did say this earlier as well. There's lots of things. I think there's just so much, I mean, there's pressure on everybody, but there is a lot of pressure on mums to do, well, you know, with the whole multitasking, you know, we're expected to do absolutely everything, right? Yeah, if we've got a supportive, well, some are single mums, but even the ones married, the support, they still have the support of the dad, but still mums in general tend to be taking on so many different roles. They've got so many hats to wear. Dad can quite often be at work, then come home. There's not so many shuffling of hats going on, would you say?
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of women have kind of taken on this multitasking thing and gone, you know, I can multitask, rather than going, actually, it's not good to multitask.
No.
It's not good for us. But, you know, there's this thing that you've got to be a multitasker, and that's the only way. And actually, that's not the only way.
Yeah, doing one thing at a time is a lot better. We you know, I suppose we've only ended up doing it because of the perception of that we do have to do it. Right?
Yeah, there's all these shoulds, isn't there? I should be doing all of this.
I should be
And
doing
there's
this.
no joy. There's no joy in multitasking, because multitasking is a bit like being in a factory, you know, doing one thing after another. Whereas doing one thing at a time and taking pleasure in it, or focusing on it, that's where the joy can be.
Yeah, sure. Because otherwise your attention is split, isn't it?
Yeah. And split attention, there's no joy in that. It's like half here, half there, and half somewhere else mentally. So it's really it's a tricky thing. And you know, like a lot of parents say that the children don't want to help with tasks at home, and it's because we make all of that look so boring, because we're like a factory.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know, we kind of do it without any joy. And if you want children to help in the house, you know, if you ask a child to wash dishes, especially young children, you know, they find joy in the bubbles and the smell. They make a huge mess. It's fun and play. The way we do it, there's no fun, there's no play. It's just
get it done.
Get through this so I can do the next job.
That's
And
right.
yeah, and you know, we're not here to have kind of hard, difficult, joyless lives. We are here to have joy and fun and play. And children are really our role models when it comes to that.
Yeah, it does appear that we've sort of come away from that a little bit more.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Again, this shoulda, woulda, coulda. So much pressure, but it's all pressure that we're putting on ourselves. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's again, it's all down to stories. It's fascinating. So it really is all to do with the mind, isn't it? It's all to do with the stories that we are choosing to tell ourselves, even if they're not serving us and they're not making us happy.
Yeah.
So for people to gain their confidence, so hypnotherapy is obviously, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I suppose I see it as it's not a cheat. What I mean is it's a quick change. It's like going through the back door, because change, when we try to do it consciously, we know that when we try to create a new habit, it takes a long time. I mean, they used to say it takes 21 days to create a new habit. I'm sure it takes a lot longer.
For something that's very easy. For something that's very easy for you can take 3 weeks.
Right.
Yeah. But for harder things, for things that are more difficult, it can take longer. Yeah. So, but you know, the first 8 years of our lives in hypnosis. So we spend the first 8 years of our lives being hypnotized, and that's where the programming happens between the age of 0 to 8. So there's been 8 years of programming and more, but they're the kind of crucial years, really, where a lot of the ideas about our identity, ourselves, are formed. And then as an adult, or whenever you get to that point, that's when you realize that these things aren't helping me anymore.
Right.
So you're right, hypnotherapy is about going through the back door.
Yes.
And it works in layers. It's not like a quick fix. It's not like a one session fix.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you have more sessions, you go deeper and deeper. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got to kind of go through the back door to make some of these changes. Absolutely. Because when you try and do things consciously, it's so much harder. You know, like a lot of people use willpower. A lot of people use other tools to try and get there.
But willpower doesn't last that long anyway, does it? Not long enough.
Yeah. I mean,
right? Well, quite often. I mean, you know, obviously my background is completely different. Mine's fitness and weight loss, but I know that somebody can use their willpower to stick to a diet or something.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't last that long until those, you know, that those have become new habits. You're not going to have the long-term change. So willpower can last. I mean, I know with myself, I would say my willpower, if I'm really, you know, geared up for something, my willpower probably lasts 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, if it takes at least 3 weeks to create a habit, there's a bit of a gap, right? There's a gap.
Yeah.
And so from the way I see it is, you know, going to a hypnotherapist or doing something to do with hypnotherapy is to try and close that gap.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise, left to my own, it's just not quite enough. It's not quite enough. I know it's different things, but you know, at the end of the day, whatever habit we're trying to create, it's all got the same process, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So monitoring your thoughts, how are you talking to yourself? Is there compassion in there? Is there self-love? And then the other tip is it's to not make conclusions about yourself or your child. So stay with curiosity rather than conclusions. And I think that's probably the biggest tip I can give you is not to put a label on yourself or your child. And ask questions that will lead to information, not to more judgments and not to more conclusions.
Right. We've got to be less judgmental and not just of others, of ourselves too, right?
Yeah. And the truth is that when we're less judgmental about ourselves, we are less judgmental about other people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because if we can give ourselves the grace to make mistakes, we then allow other people to learn because we know mistakes. And actually, some of it is about reframing. So rather than seeing a mistake as a fault, something about me, I shouldn't make mistakes. I should be perfect. It's about reframing that actually mistakes are, they help us to learn.
Well, they're necessary.
They're absolutely, if you're not making a mistake, you're only repeating what you already know.
Right.
So it's something within your capacity to do. It's where you're making a mistake that we should recognize that's learning for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How can I grow from this mistake?
Yeah, this is how we learn. Like I said, you know, there isn't a rule book. There's no this is what you do to be successful and this. And if you don't do that, then you're you know, every child is different, every situation is different. You don't know what different things that the child has gone through, different things that the parents gone through. There is no right and wrong, is there?
Yeah.
So we're all just doing the best we can with the information that we have at the time.
Absolutely. You know that saying, I'm sure you've heard it many times, you know, it's not about perfection, it's about progress.
Absolutely.
So it's always kind of, you know, you're always, as you learn more things, you'll be making progress. But if we're only aiming for perfection, it means we're only aiming to do things we already know.
And we're setting ourselves up for failure.
And then it means we're avoiding things where we could have growth. Or if we're going into growth areas, we're quickly running back to our comfort zone because it was so awful to fail. It was so awful to make a mistake. So we're not open to making mistakes. We're not open to not getting things right.
I mean, it's I can sort of I understand why people, you know, this whole comfort zone thing is, you know, we don't, as human beings, I think we don't want to, nobody wants to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So the comfort zone, I mean, you know, it is a dangerous place to be, because it you know, nobody wants that feeling of being uncomfortable. But like you said, this is where that's where growth is. So
Yeah.
only stay. How boring life would be also.
Exactly. And the comfort zone becomes uncomfortable because it is boring. There's no growth. It's like Groundhog Day. And so it's about going into your growth zone, but in a very, you know, looking at small steps,
Right.
rather than a giant leap where you then end up in panic mode and go running back to your comfort zone. So it's about taking really small steps.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
And baby steps. And then obviously, you know, the other thing that people struggle with is asking for help. So it's kind of recognizing that asking for help is actually really good. We're not meant to be doing this on our own.
Right.
Especially with parenting. Nobody's meant to be parenting on their own. You know.
And again, do you think that links back to feelings of failing?
Absolutely. Why do I have to ask for help when other people seem to be managing without? And actually, we don't know what resources other people have.
No, that's
We
right.
assume they're a superwoman.
Yeah. Again, we're creating stories.
Yeah, and I'm the failure because now I have to ask for help. Surely, if I have to ask for help, there's something wrong. Rather than actually, this isn't meant to be. We're not meant to be doing this on our own. We're meant to be doing it with other people. People are there to support us. And how good do people feel when we ask them for help and they can actually help us?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah, and people want, you know, we naturally want to support and help other people. We feel so good when we can do something for someone else.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
So why do you think it is so that people, you know, a lot of people are reluctant to ask for help?
I think, you know, there's feelings of shame that we should, you know, like we've moved away from a community and like the village to doing things very independently. So it's like I should have all the resources to do whatever I'm doing on my own. I shouldn't need to ask for help. And so we're very much in this kind of this, you know, just being like independent units rather than seeing that we're all connected, we're all interconnected, and we're here to build networks. We're here to support each other. We're here to build a bigger life rather than just this one narrow focus.
Absolutely.
So I think there's some shame around asking for help.
And do you think that obviously with everything that's gone on this year and everybody being on lockdown, do you think that sort of added to that, made things worse for a lot of people?
Yeah, because now we really can't ask for help. You know, people can't come around and support us. Yes, people can do things virtually, but yeah, it's really kind of showing us we're not meant to be doing this on our own. You know, we need schools. We need like all the bigger things that are out there. We need friends. We need the extensions that are available to us. It's part of our social nature as human beings. You know, we're not meant to be grown doing everything like we're a robot.
Yeah, sure. And like I said, you know, wearing all these different hats. I mean, I've said this time and time again. I'm so glad my girls are older, because I totally feel that I would be really struggling right now if I was trying to put, you know, mum hat on one minute and teacher hat on the next minute. And, you know, I applaud all the mums and dads out there that are having to put on a different hat every hour.
Yeah, because before all of this, we were wearing so many hats already.
Yes.
And now there have been additional hats. It's like, yeah, it's completely compounded everything that's gone on. Yeah.
So do you think that's not helped with people's confidence? Do you think have you noticed a change in the last year in general due to
Yeah, I
what's
think
been
people are
happening.
struggling with their own mental health, with their anxiety. Children's mental health has suffered and they're more anxious. And then everybody's in the same space. There's no kind of
There's no escape, is there?
no, there's no escape, and there will be an end, but it's when you're in the middle of it that you can't quite see the end.
Absolutely.
And it's the Groundhog Day again. It's the same thing over and over again.
So for people who are out there who are sort of really feeling that and are lacking in confidence in general, what would be your what would you say to them to help them overcome this at this time?
I mean, what I would say at this time is whatever emotions you're feeling, really go into them. Don't deny, suppress, or don't dismiss your emotions or your children's emotions. Really give yourself the empathy that you need. Give yourself really kind of dig into what are your needs, and then see if you can try and meet your needs in whatever way you can at this time. So yeah, don't be afraid of your big emotions. Your emotions are there for a reason. They're there to give you some information. And so really kind of sit with your emotions. Don't just try and dismiss them and get rid of them. Because sometimes when we're feeling these things, we try and distract ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Let's watch TV, let's do something to get away from this emotion that feels really awful.
Again,
And
because
such
we've been told to be positive all the time. So even
yeah,
that, I think, is putting a lot of pressure on a lot of people, because
yeah,
going back to we should,
yeah,
we should be positive, or we should be happy all the time. And so if we are having these feelings, then again, we're failing. But it's not
yeah.
like that, right?
Absolutely, because if you try and be positive all the time, you're trying to cover things up, and that's
Mm-hmm.
hard work. And it's actually go into your feelings, really sit with your feelings, let them know you're there. You can see your big feelings, you're comfortable with them, and do this for the children as well. So really just be with your emotions. Don't try and do your emotions, just allow your emotions to be. And what will happen is they will pass, because that's the temporary nature of emotions. But it's when we try and suppress them, when we try and push them down, they get locked into us, and then they keep, every now and then
They're going to
they'll,
come back.
they'll leak. They're going to leak out of us in a small way or a big way. So it's really kind of allowing those emotions to just go through you.
And
And
then
when you're feeling, go into your body so if you're feeling sadness, you're feeling overwhelmed, really kind of check your body. Where is it in my body? Is it in my throat? Is it my chest, my stomach, my shoulders? Where is this? Maybe put your hand there. And then when you breathe in, breathe into that area. You're not trying to get rid of it. You're just trying to really feel it. So feel the emotions and let your breath go in there. And eventually the emotion will transform. It will leave. And that's okay. It will pass, and it's when it's been processed.
perfect advice. Yeah, I do think that's the issue. I mean, we hear it all the time. Sayings like, what you resist will persist. But I think
Yeah.
we've been brought again. It's down to how we've been brought up to believe that we've got to put on a happy face, and so it's bad if we have feelings of negativity, but they're there.
And
And
feelings are feelings.
yeah, they're there, and yeah, like you say, just allow. I think it is this thing to get people to allow. It's okay. You're
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
You're all okay. You're not
Yeah.
broken. You don't need to be fixed. Everybody is having these feelings. I'm very up and down at the moment. You've just got to sort of go along with it. I think, with everything that's going on out there as well.
Yeah.
There's extra pressure on us, so it's perfectly natural and human
Mm.
have these types of emotions. And yeah, just as you say, everything, this too shall pass. And it's having that, getting everyone to understand that it is okay. And like you've just said, it's temporary. This is all temporary. It's all
Even
going
the good emotions, if we can call them good emotions, again, there's no binary with emotions. They're just there, the information. So when you're feeling happy, that's going to be temporary. It will pass. Whatever emotions you're feeling, they are just there to give you some information. So if you're feeling sadness, it's there to say, recognize me. You know, I'm here for a reason. And then really allow it to be. And then it will pass in its own natural, in its own natural time. Happiness will pass in its own time.
Yeah.
But I think those kind of the emotions that we call negative get stuck in us because we really want to do something about them.
Right. So we don't want them, we're pushing against them, which is making them stronger.
We're just kind of filling ourselves up with them. You know, like I almost kind of think like there's a tank and we're filling up, by suppressing them, we're filling them up. And then it's going to come out in different ways. And there'll be like a build-up in our bodies of these emotions. So it's really, it's just recognizing emotions are completely natural and normal, and it's okay.
Great advice. And the way I always see it is, if we block these things in, they, our thoughts, our feelings have to manifest through us, through an action or a behavior pattern. So the more we do that, it's going to manifest in something that's maybe not so good. There's definitely a link between the mind and the body, and I do feel a body that's not at ease.
Absolutely. Disease.
There's a link definitely to how our thoughts and our feelings. So you just said it there with breathing. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But when do we actually stop? Like you say, it's distraction everywhere. Distraction. Watch the telly, do this, but actually take a moment to focus on the breath. Is huge, and is again something that's come up with pretty much every topic that we've spoken about, to do with stress, to do with depression, to do with everything. The stress hormone, cortisol, it all comes down. It's so interesting. Everything we've spoken about all comes back down to the same thing every single time. And something as simple as breathing, which people go, well, this is what we do. No, we don't. Not consciously. We don't do it enough. Focus on the breath. That will help calm the mind. And
and I think really even, breathing is great, but just be. You don't have to do anything. Just be as you are, and be, if you can, be comfortable with whatever is coming up. And I suppose the way I treat breathing, it's just like you're breathing into an area.
Right.
Just to kind of open it up and for you to really feel whatever's going on. If you can just be with your emotions, just like, if you're feeling sad and a friend is sitting there with you, they're not trying to cheer you up. They're not trying to tell you shouldn't be feeling like that. They're not constantly giving you tissues so you can wipe your face and get rid of all, They're just sitting there and they're holding space for you. They're not trying to change you in any way. They're not trying to
judge you.
Anything. It's such a gift if someone can do that for you. How about if you could do that for yourself?
There you go. Best bit of advice I've heard. There you go. Why? Why do we have so much problem being that allowing to ourselves? That is absolutely it. Why can't we do that for ourselves?
Yeah. We live in a fast and furious paced world, don't we? So it's quick fixes. Let's get moving. Let's fix this so we can get on with the next job. Rather than
you said it just there about I love that, and I'm got a bad habit, as it were, of sometimes feeling that I should be doing. I think I had this conversation last week, very similar conversation last week, about be. Simply be. Why are we constantly feeling like we should be doing something? Do.
Yeah, probably FOMO, we're missing out on things. We're not keeping up with everyone else.
Or we're feeling like we're being a failure because we're not.
Yeah.
Do. Yes. So from what our conversation today has been, to help people with their confidence, whether that's confidence as a parent, just in general. Run through your top tips one more time, Tania.
Oh my goodness. So monitor your thoughts. How are you talking to yourself? What's your inner dialogue like? Sit with your emotions. Just be. Allow whatever's happening, and be curious and not in conclusion.
Fantastic. Great.
And reframe things like failure and mistakes.
Absolutely. And give yourself a pat on the back. You're doing great. You're doing great. Brilliant. Thank you, Tania.
Thank you, Karen.
If you'd like to get in touch with Tania, all her details will be below. And so, if you've been struggling in the last year, listen to what Tania's just said. It's absolutely fantastic advice. And there is no reason to be feeling like that for too long, right? It's all temporary. This too shall pass. So yes, great advice. Thank you for that. And we'll be back on Thursday with a keto coffee with Karen. So a keto coffee with Karen is more focused on health, holistic health, restorative health, and we'll be talking about inflammation. Okay, and that'll be Thursday. So thank you for listening. And otherwise, we'll be back next Monday with Coffee with Karen. Thanks. Bye.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.